This video is sponsored by Audible. Start listening with a 30-day Audible trial and your first audiobook plus 2 Audible originals are free. Visit audible.com/thedom or text the Dom to 500 500. Hello my beautiful watchers and welcome to Lost in Adaptation and the second of 3 episodes I'm making to discuss the changes that occurred to the plot of the Phantom of the Opera as it progressed through 3 different mediums of entertainment. This episode is about how much the West End musical by Andrew Lloyd Webber has in common with the original book by Gaston Leroux. To avoid rampant repetition, I'm going to assume that everyone has watched the first episode in this little trilogy of mine in which I synopsisized the novel. If you haven't and you've not read the book, you might find yourself lacking some of the required context to fully appreciate the significance of the changes I'm about to describe. So, there's the thing. The musical theatre production of The Phantom of the Opera wasn't the first adaptation of Leroux's novel, but it is currently the most famous and successful. Its lead creator, Andrew Lloyd Webber, is a British composer of somewhat great renown. He was one of the creative minds behind Jesus Christ Superstar, Evita, and Joseph and the amazing Technicolor Dreamcoat, a personal favourite of mine. In light of his services to the arts, the Queen of England bestowed upon him a knighthood and a position in the House of Lords, a power that I personally feel he has abused most unforgivably, leading to me not caring for him as a person, even if I begrudgingly can't deny the genius of his work. In 2011, to celebrate 25 years of uninterrupted phantoming, a special 3-night show was organised by Lloyd Webber and producer Karen McIntosh to be performed at the Royal Albert Hall in London. The lead roles were performed by Ramin Karimloo, Sierra Bogues, and Hadley Fraser, all popular veterans of the play, and several cast members from the original run made appearances and cameos. Due to the tickets immediately selling out for all 3 nights, the performance was live-streamed to cinemas around the country, and a film was edited together from the best parts of each night to be released later that year. The Royal Albert Hall proved to be a good venue for filming, but less than ideal for hosting the Phantom of the Opera, as the stage was far too small to allow for the sheer scale of the production, forcing them to use LED screens to simulate some of the larger sets. The most notable sacrifice was the iconic chandelier, which is usually risen up over the audience at the start of the production, then dropped down at the appropriate moment. Lacking the facilities for this, they settled for using a rising curtain for the big reveal and pyrotechnics to represent its destruction. Now, I think I'm going to have to be a tad more lenient with a stage production than I would be a film regarding changes to the plot due to the limitations of what you can do with a live performance with mostly physical sets and a bunch of other obvious factors, but I still think it's going to be interesting to compare this to the book. Once again, I can only promise to do my best with the French pronunciations. I might even do slightly better than I did last time, but let's face it, I'm not going to do good. Lastly, before we jump into this, I do want to acknowledge that I was super beaten to the punch here by several years by Lindsay Ellis, who not only did an insightful breakdown of the differences between the book, musical, and Schumacher film, but also discussed the many different film interpretations of the Phantom over the last 100 years or so. I mention this because one thing in particular she brings up is the fact that some of the changes in the musical might be due to some serious self-insertion from Andrew Lloyd Webber, who perhaps related a little too hard to the physically unattractive genius whose true beauty can only be appreciated through his music. As I don't want to simply regurgitate her observations in a British accent, might I highly recommend watching her videos on the subject if you haven't already. Okay, let's talk adaptation. And despite what my attempts to make excuses for the musical by mentioning the limitations of a live show format might imply, there's not an insubstantial amount of plot beats from the book copy-pasted into the script. For example, the opera house changing management after being bought out by Richard and Monchamar. The honourable gentleman being informed that the building they just bought is haunted by an opera ghost, who quickly starts sending them letters, usually through Madame Giry, a long-time employee of the opera. The quote-unquote ghost being under the impression that true ownership of the opera house belongs to him and demanding certain things from the new dual managers in exchange for being allowed to run it for him, namely complete creative control over the cast, a 20,000 francs a month salary, and exclusive use of Box 5 during every performance. Christine Daae, a relative nobody in the musical world, taking over the lead role in a performance at the last minute and giving a stunning performance, a feat she attributes to singing lessons she received from a mysterious and ominous source. The Viscount Raoul de Chagny seeing her from the audience and recognizing her as his childhood sweetheart for whom he once waded into the sea to save a scarf after it blew away. Christine being unusually willing to believe that the mysterious voice giving her singing lessons is an angel of music sent to her from heaven to teach her how to be the ultimate soprano because her late father had promised her he would arrange exactly that as he was departing his mortal coil. Her teacher eventually arriving in her room in person and leading her through the wall mirror into a passageway that led to his underground lair on the far side of a hidden lake. The play didn't go full casket with the Phantom's bed, but there is the suggestion of it in the shape of it, so I'll give it that one. The opera ghost working on his masterpiece opera, Don Juan Triumvir. triumphant. Christine getting a bad case of the curiosities and looking to see what's under his mask to rather explosively hostile results. Ooh, you're a prying Pandora, aren't you? A lying little Delilah and no mistake, goodness me. R to the M getting more correspondence from the OG and scoffing at his continuous demands. Carlotta, the usual star of the show, taking an extreme dislike to Christine because of all the ghost-related attention she's been getting, then losing her voice on stage when she refuses to surrender the lead role to her like the Phantom demanded. Christine taking Raoul to the roof of the opera house to tell him how frightened of the Phantom she is, and the two of them making plans to get secretly engaged. The Phantom in question overhearing this conversation from his vantage point above them. The opera house chandelier getting so callously destroyed. A masquerade party being thrown at the opera house that the Phantom gatecrashers dressed as Edgar Allan Poe's Red Death stalking abroad. The OG confusing the crap out of people by throwing his voice around, and kidnapping Christine during a performance, attempting to strong-arm the poor girl into marrying him by threatening Raoul's life. The kiss that melted the Phantom's icy heart and compelled him to show mercy to a victim and prioritize someone above himself for the first time in his miserable life. Christine and Raoul cheesing it to live their lives together while the Phantom disappears, I guess? This seems to me like it could be interpreted as him leaving the opera or dying, so I'm really not sure what category to put this in. Oh. Okay, apparently there's an awful sequel that confirms that he lives, never fucking mind. They definitely captured the original opera ghost's motivations in this musical, and I don't just mean his fixation on Christine as his potential bae. They also worked in his complete lack of empathy for others stemming from a lifetime of no one ever showing him 1 ounce of human kindness. The ring that, in the book, the Phantom forced on Christine and she returned to him posthumously is... I'll go as far as to say that it's reference because the circumstances of its exchange and symbolism are kind of different in the musical. Excuse me? Yes, this Apollo's lyre is occupied. The musical introduces a prologue set many years after the events of the main plot. Raoul is elderly now, Christine has evidently passed away, and at some point the opera house has fallen into disrepair. Random props and posters are being auctioned off, and Raoul recognizes a Clockwork Monkey music box as something that Christine had described to him. The prologue itself is a relatively harmless addition, but I gotta say, the monkey in particular seems random as hell. Yes, it's part of the set a few times throughout the performance, but I swear, not once does Christine even look at it, so I really don't get how Raoul is supposed to even know about it, let alone get all misty-eyed over it. Anyway, with the big reveal of the chandelier, the story jumps back in time to when everyone was young and virile. In fact, adaptation-wise, it jumps a little too far back. The main plot of the musical begins before the start of the book, so we're treated to a rehearsal of the performance that Christine would end up leading in the first chapter, which was apparently the first time that Richard and Montchaumar introduced themselves as the new owners. Several other changes become apparent right away. Madame Giry is significantly younger and appears to have been promoted from concierge to the choreographer of the ballet. Raoul appears to have a financial investment in the opera now, which better explains why he's allowed to have free reign of the house. I kind of got the impression from the book that it was just sort of accepted that rich people could do whatever the heck they wanted if they insistently whined about it for long enough. Christine now gets her lead role after Carlotta quits in a diva tantrum brought on by the Phantom playing silly buggers with the set one too many times, making him directly responsible for the change in lineup. He might have been responsible for her illness in the book, but I don't think that's confirmed. At this point, I should probably mention that I read the public domain translation of the Phantom of the Opera, which is apparently not the best available as it cuts some parts of the original story out and had several questionable translation choices. However, it is the version that most adaptations are based on. One such strange choice was to, with the single exception of the front cover, always translate Le Fantôme de l'Opéra as the opera ghost and not the Phantom of the Opera, so as a result the title is never name-dropped in universe. Andrew Lloyd Webber corrected for this almost immediately. Fuck me, it's the Phantom of the Opera. Holy fucking balls, the Phantom of the Opera. Meg Giry, Madame Giry's daughter, has her role expanded upon somewhat. Just one of many young dancers terrified of the opera ghost in the book, she's now Christine's best friend and confidant. She's the first person to hear about Christine's angel in the play, and the first to discover the Phantom's home right after he abandons it. She's even the very last thing you see in the production as it fades out on her holding the OG's mask. The film also plays up a male lead singer and Carlotta's husband, I think, as a recurring comedic relief character. It's easy to miss because the dummy they used to represent him is pretty bad, but he meets an unfortunate fate near the end at the hands of Eric's Punjab noose. Okay, so, Raoul. He still isn't the best because he remains a spoiled rich boy with more self-confidence and years of experience, but Lloyd Webber managed to make him stunningly inoffensive compared to his jealous, entitled, immature book counterpart. This is partly due to his feelings for Christine being so much more enthusiastically mutual from the start now. Their reunion seems genuinely happy for both parties, and Christine, apparently not as immediately concerned with avoiding making the Phantom jelly, makes no attempt to pretend not to recognize him. Their secret engagement now comes across as a source of happiness for both of them, and not a bone that she seems to be throwing him at the Phantom's behest to keep him quiet and content until he buggers off for an exploration mission to the Antarctic. A major, unmissable change in the musical is, well, Christine. She just really wants to fuck that Phantom now. This is one of the before-mentioned things that ties back to Andrew Lloyd Webber's self-insertion, and again, you'll probably be better off going to Lindsay Ellis's videos for a chronicle of the opera ghost transformation into a sex symbol. For my part, all I really want to say is, yeesh, Lloyd Webber, you probably should have either made Christine romantically and sexually attracted to the OG's musical genius, or confirmed that she secretly thinks he's the ghost of her father, but not both. Another change, and possibly a knock-on effect of this added sexual tension, is Christine stays at least partially under the Phantom's psychological, borderline mystical spell for a lot more of the story. If you'll recall, in the book, that ended the second she woke up in his underground lair the first time he brought her there. Oh, balls, he's not an angel, I've been kidnapped by a smelly loony. It was pity for his misery and his patheticness, not infatuation, that kept her coming back to him in the book. There's a surprising amount of interesting adaptation fun facts relating to the musical Phantom's iconic half mask. Starting at the beginning, in the book, Eric very rarely bothered to wear any sort of mask at all. He only did so around Christine, not giving a flying fuck if he scared the crap out of anyone else with his hideousness. His only regular concession to vanity was wearing what LaRue, still pretending he was talking about a real person, theorized to be a prosthetic nose, to hide the fact that he was born without one. Christine described the mask that he wore around her as a black mask that covered his entire face and fashionably matched his black attire. However, the problem that Lloyd Webber's team encountered with complete face-obscuring masks is no one can hear a bloody word you're saying in them, and they certainly don't allow Tony Award-winning singing to escape them. The original plan was to scale it down to a half mask, but that apparently still interfered with the stage microphone, so it was trimmed down yet more, and as a result, the Phantom's deformity was toned down with it, becoming asymmetrically primarily located on the right side of his face. They used makeup to make his left side look a little flaky and his lips slightly warped, but it's inescapably no longer the shit-your-pants terrifying zombie face of the book. Not surprisingly, to accommodate the stage performance format, time is condensed quite heavily, not just between scenes, but within them too. The Phantom goes through his rage at Christine for taking his mask, his ominous declaration that he's going to have to keep her forever now, his fall into despair and self-loathing, and his eventual concession to allow her to return to the world above, all in the space of about 2 minutes. Not counting the transition out of the prologue, the only significant time jump in the musical takes place during the intermission as they skip forward through 6 months of Phantom inactivity. Joseph Bouquet is granted a little more life in the musical. Instead of being found dead the night of Christine's first performance, he's now murdered during what was supposed to be Carlotta's big return to the stage as part of his retribution on the management for disobeying his demands that Christine be given the lead role permanently. It looks like he was the chosen victim for the Phantom's first public murder, partly because he was conveniently alone up on the catwalks, and partly because of Bouquet's ill-advised habit of making fun of the opera ghost and not taking the threat of his existence seriously. While the destruction of the poor chandelier is accurate, the Phantom's motivations for doing it are changed slightly. It was originally yet more retribution for Carlotta being given the lead role, however, as I just said, the murder of Bouquet now fills that role in the story. The chandelier now meets its fate slightly later, after the rooftop scene, making it the victim of the Phantom venting his rage after learning that Christine and Raoul are about to become an item. Now, obviously, there's songs now would be an inane thing to bring up in an adaptation review of a musical, however, I do want to mention that in this particular case, some of the song and dance numbers go on for so long, for better or worse, they do significantly change the pacing of the story. The Phantom's backstory appears to have been adjusted, so he now ended up in a carnival in France after he spent some time in Persia instead of before. He was also apparently being held against his will by the freak show attraction now, which I am pretty fucking sure wouldn't have been legal in late 19th century France. If you're going to try to, well, actually me about this in the comments, I'm going to need a citation backing up your claim. After the intermission, which takes place immediately after the chandelier dies, the story goes a little off the rails adaptation-wise. As you might remember from the last section, there's still some details that stay true to the book past this point, but they're now surrounded by a lot of LaRue-defiant machinations. For starters, the opera ghost is no longer at the masquerade party just to wander around and show off his sweet Red Death cosplay. He's there to make a dramatic public appearance and hand over his completed masterpiece opera, Don Juan Triumphant, with demands for them to perform it. Don Juan Triumphant is mentioned in the book. Christine hears the Phantom play a bit of of it to work off his feelings after she pulled his mask off, and described it as expressing every emotion, every suffering of which mankind is capable. However, it was Eric's expressed intention to never show his masterpiece to anyone else and eventually be buried with it forever unperformed. Raoul then had the bright idea to use this production to draw his nemesis out, talking the others into capitulating to the opera ghost's demands so he can fill the opera house with soldiers intent on apprehending him. However, the Phantom easily evades them and sneaks onto stage dressed as a Dementor. It's almost like performing the opera that he wrote meant that he would have a comprehensive knowledge of where everyone will be at all times and an easy way of providing himself with an opportunity to get close to Christine by disguising himself as a Nazgul. Weird that. Anyway, Christine eventually realizes who the ghost of Christmas yet to come is, and first unhoods him, then unmasks him in front of everyone. The enraged Phantom then drags her back to his cave to try to force her to marry him, which finally brings the plot back to something slightly more parallel to the book. While it is accurate that a kiss ended up saving Raoul and Christine, it's changed from a tender peck on his forehead to a full-on snog on the lips, which is a little weird to me because in the book Eric compares it to all the kisses that he didn't get from his, mother. However, I do acknowledge that this version of the story was written the better part of a century later, and it makes sense to update the level of acceptable pre-marriage intimacy with the times, so I guess I can forgive Lloyd Webber for wanting to introduce a little tongue action. And finally, an overall change. If you recall, in my last video I explained that a key issue with the book was that while it was extensively a gothic romance, it followed all the plot beats and tropes of the murder mystery books that LaRue was more adept at writing. Lloyd Webber does away with this identity crisis and then some. This musical is 100% gothic romance. This musical is one of the most defining gothic romances of the entire genre. There's no longer any attempts to make you question the Phantom's identity, or need to explain how he performed all his little tricks. While his status as a living, corporeal person is confirmed, the audience is left to decide for themselves if there was a mystical element to his abilities, or they were just a magician's misdirections. These things are not important to the story, and are now treated as such. Floating, falling, sweet intoxication. Touch me, trust me, savor each sensation. Let the dream begin, let your darkest side give in to the power of the music that I write. The power of the music of the night. Let's start with a list of characters who didn't make it through the adaptation process. The Persian. Yep, they cut out the only not white character. A lot of his role in the story is absorbed into Madame Giry. She now has the greater knowledge of the Phantom's past and the hidden passage down to his hideout. Unlike the helpful Iranian, she doesn't go with Raoul to rescue his lady love, but one thing I will say to her credit is she does away with all these silly tricks that he used to get Raoul to hold his hand up at the level of his eye and just straight up tells him that he needs to block the Punjab. Raoul instantly forgets this and gets himself noosed, but she tried. Next up, Raoul's older brother, the Count de Chagny, and his unfortunate death at the hands of Eric. He really didn't have as much of an impact on the story, so you don't feel his absence as badly as the Persians. And alas, slightly balmy Madame Valerius does not appear to exist in this version, so there's no one to irresponsibly encourage Christine to spend more time with her heavenly tutor. Story-wise, they skip over a few things like Raoul's trip to stalk Christine in their hometown, Eric playing her father's violin for her there in the graveyard, and her subsequent long-term disappearance. While Madame Giry does mention that he's a genius architect, there's no longer any hint that the Phantom was the man who designed and built the Paris Opera House, making his sense of ownership over it more purely delusion, and raises the question of why there's hidden passages that lead from the foundations to the dressing rooms. They apparently also decided not to include Eric rigging the Opera House to blow sky high if Christine turned down his marriage proposal, and the insect-themed knobs that she could turn to signify her choice. Eric's torture chamber is likewise omitted. Instead of stumbling right into it while trying to rescue Christine, Raoul successfully makes it to the underground lair, but immediately turns his back on the Phantom, allowing him to walk slowly over to his closet, get his Punjab, slowly walk back to him, and noose him up in it. It's a different sort of useless, but I guess it's the same level of useless. Another Eric's evil plan related plot twist that Lloyd Webber didn't go with was his intention to rejoin society once Christine married him. He had apparently devised a new type of mask that was so realistic he felt confident walking around in public with it. I guess Eric invented latex. Kudos, Phantom old boy. One of the most significant segues away from the A-plot in the book involved Richard and Moncharmin trying to lure whoever was trying to extort money out of them by pretending to be an opera ghost out of hiding by using his demanded salary as bait, and Eric successfully bamboozling them out of their 20,000 francs in cash twice. The second investigation involved them manically attempting to recreate the exact goings-on of the first while the money was in Richard's pocket secured with a safety pin. When Eric used one of his many trapdoors to get the drop on them and pickpocket the money, he was nice enough to leave them the pin as a souvenir. While on the whole the R&M subplots didn't annoy me too much, this particular one took place during the climax. While everyone else was running around trying to find Christine, these two chucklenuts were locked in their office going mad with paranoia. It's a bit of a pace killer, and I'm not sad they cut this out of the musical. Madame Giry's firing for claiming to know the Phantom and subsequent rehiring to placate him is skipped over, possibly because the stage version of her seems far too intimidating to sack. This means that even if the chandelier had fallen in this version, it wouldn't have landed on the head of her replacement on her first day of work. This omission is more significant than you might think, as that was one of the true-to-life events that LaRue used to try to convince people that his book was non-fiction. The Paris Opera House chandelier really did fall down on the head of a very unlucky new employee. The other real thing is the lake under the opera, by the way. They apparently sometimes use it to train firemen about swimming in the dark. Upon her reinstatement, Richard and Montchamar try to get more information out of Madame Giry and discover that she is so fanatically loyal to her ghosty goo because he once wrote her a note prophesizing that her daughter Meg would one day marry an emperor who saw her dancing in the opera ballet. They also decide to have her arrested when they discover her part in helping Eric pinch their money, and her amusing response is to punch Richard in the head. And last but not least, not once in the entire musical does the Phantom of the Opera reveal that his name is Eric. Final thoughts. This musical is undeniably way more of Andrew Lloyd Webber's vision than Gaston Leroux's, but it is still recognizably the same story and surprisingly true to the opera Ghost's original character arc, all things considered. The prologue seems a little unnecessary just from a story perspective, but that's not why they added it. It serves a purpose for the big bombastic musical opening, not the plot. As I said, the second half, in particular the build-up to the climax, is where they appear to have taken the most liberties with the storyline, but it doesn't overly usurp the meaning or the message. I must ask you to forgive me for saying this, because I know I'm supposed to be restricting myself to grading accuracy, not superiority, but I would personally say the majority of the changes are an improvement. The catchy as hell songs and music nicely distract from the, let's face it, not amazing story. We now have a hero who's almost likable and who offers a romance that comes off as relatively mutual and healthy and can now juxtapose the possessive toxic one with the villain instead of just seeming like a watered down copy of it and lesser of two evils that Christine has to choose between. And a sympathetic villain that you have a halfway decent chance of actually feeling sympathy for instead of contempt. It would take a lot to screw up an adaptation of something that's been so skillfully adapted into another medium once already, so please do join me next time, my beautiful watchers, so we can discuss how Andrew Lloyd Webber and Joel Schumacher did exactly that. If I could leave you with the usual reminder that YouTube somehow manages to be simultaneously a wonderful place that provides independent artists a platform to thrive and find appreciative audiences on, and a black hole of despair that will crush you into nothing if you fail to get enough likes and comments on your videos, so if you wouldn't mind helping it remain the former instead of the latter for me, I would be much appreciative. Also, if I've successfully installed within you even a little interest in the book that started all of this, might I suggest Audible as a splendid medium for enjoying it. Audible has an unmatched library of audiobooks for your listening pleasure. When you sign up, you'll get a 30-day trial that comes with a free audiobook of your choice and 2 Audible originals. Every subsequent month, you'll be given a credit that can be used to purchase an audiobook of any price, meaning Audible makes the longest, most epic novels and the shortest short stories equally available to all. There's zero obligation to continue past the 30 days, and you'll get to keep all the audiobooks you've downloaded regardless of if your membership is active. There is no catch or fine print, it's a genuine test run with some cool free stuff. Audiobooks are a godsend for people who have trouble finding the time to keep up with their reading or regularly face the monotony of a long car journey, providing a chance to multitask to the former and much needed entertainment to stave off the madness to the latter. So yes, follow the link in the video description to go to audible.com/thedom or text the DOM to 500 500 to get a free audiobook, 2 free Audible originals, and a 30-day free trial. Thank you for joining me, my beautiful watchers. If you're new here and enjoyed the video, do consider subscribing so you can be aware of new content, and I will hopefully see you all in the final Phantom-themed episode. Much love and appreciation to my patrons of honor, Shelby Holtz and Matthew J. Brish. Hello again, my beautiful watchers. I just wanted to take this opportunity to give you a quick reminder that there's a wonderful website called Patreon that's been allowing online producers to actually make a living doing what they do, since apparently YouTube's decided that they shouldn't anymore. Basically, they offer the chance to pledge a certain amount of money per month or per video in exchange for various rewards offered by the creator. There's a variety of stuff you can earn by becoming one of my patrons, including early access to all videos and taking part in that survey you see at the start of every Lost in Adaptation episode. That's actually a very important part of the process, as I use it to gauge how much I'm going to need to explain about the book and the film before I start comparing them. If you decide to become a higher level contributor, your name will be added to the credits that you're seeing right now, and you'll be given the option to join my private chat room so you can regularly talk with me and other patrons. If you're keen enough to join the topmost tier of patronage, you'll earn the most coveted of all the rewards, the chance to pick a future adaptation to be reviewed by yours truly. However, if right now you are thinking, "My goodness, the Dom, I can't do that, for I have no money left after building a personal fortress to prepare for the coming zombie apocalypse. Do you have any idea how expensive a lifetime supply of food, water, and ammunition is?" Fear not, it would still be a huge help to me if you were to give that like button the old clickaroo, share this episode on social media with perhaps a little recommendation to your friends to check it out, and subscribe if you've not already. It really helps my channel grow and reach new beautiful watchers. I hope you have a most pleasant day, and I will see you in the next episode. Hello my beautiful watchers, and welcome to Lost in Adaptation and the second of 3 episodes I'm making to discuss the changes that occurred to the plot of the Phantom of the Opera as it progressed through 3 different mediums of entertainment. You know, sometimes it just occurs to me, like, just how nerdy my show is. You're kind of in the way there, buddy. Yes, I'm talking to you. Oh, you're a sleepy boy, aren't you? Karimloo. Ramin Karimloo. Pronounce it right, come on. The lead roles were performed by Ramin Karimloo, Sierra Bogues. Fuck. Perhaps related a little too hard to the physically unattractive genius who chukukabu. Guys, I'm trying to sing here. So Terry, do you mind licking your balls some other time when I'm not trying to film? No? It's important you do it now? Okay, buddy. Okay. You know, other cats are like on Twitter saving babies, and you're running into windows. Relatively mutual and healthy that can now juxtapose the possessive Tocklet 661 bing, speak words good. Is it Joel Schumacher or Joel? I think I'm saying it the French way. Every subsequent month you'll get yeah, that's actually hilarious. I can't believe it's November, I'm so fucking hot. LA, yo. Might I suggest Audible as a splendid... And that was the last time anyone ever saw him.